Have you been diagnosed with IBS, but no diet change, supplements, or doctor recommendations have resolved your symptoms? Or do you have no diagnosis of any kind, but you've been plagued by symptoms like bloating, constipation, diarrhea, acid reflux, insomnia, weight gain or weight loss, or anemia, and nothing's helped no matter what you've tried? Or do you feel like you eat healthier than all your friends, but you still struggle with fatigue, discomfort after eating, and just not feeling your best? If you said yes to any of these things, then this episode is for you. On today's episode, I'll be continuing with week 4 of our 7 pathogen series by talking about parasites. I'll be sharing things like common parasite symptoms, why you might have a parasite, why you haven't been tested for a parasite, the best parasite test to do, and why a parasite cleanse or treatment might not have resolved your symptoms. Hint, it has nothing to do with the parasite. Parasites are one of the most common causes of IBS, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, insomnia, and more that I've seen in my clinic over the last 6 years and with over 600 clients. And on today's episode, I'm going to debunk every single parasite myth I can think of because the number one reason that clients who work with me aren't feeling better is because of a failure to find a pathogen, treat it successfully, or help the body fully recover from the damage the pathogen created. In part 4 of this series, I'm going to point you to the fastest way to heal, not only from parasites, but from everything that is causing your symptoms so you can live symptom-free and get back to your normal life. It's time to feel your best, have energy, and get back to your life. It's time to kill some parasites. Hey friend, welcome to the Better Belly Podcast. If you're currently trying endless supplements, doctor visits, and diet changes to heal your mystery symptoms, you are in the right place. We're here to solve the real root causes behind your gut, hormone, skin, sleep, and brain concerns, literally anything and everything in your body. My name is Allison Jordan. I'm a functional medicine practitioner that has supported over 150 clients just like you to heal problems that no one has been able to fix. You don't need a perfect diet or a random supplement you found on Instagram to heal. You need a proven system that heals your whole body from the inside out. That's what I'm here to share with you, episode by episode. It's time to make health easy again. And just as a reminder, this information is not meant to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your own health practitioner before you make any changes to your health. So I am very excited for today's episode because parasites are near and dear to my heart. You can even say potentially that parasites are the whole reason that this podcast exists, because the thing that initiated all my health problems that started in 2015 that no doctor could resolve was a freaking parasite. And I had to learn this way later than I needed to have. And I could have avoided lots of health complications and issues that cropped up if someone had found this parasite sooner. So I'm so excited to bring this content to you so that hopefully you can find that parasite faster than otherwise, or if you already feel like you do have one or you know you have one and you're like, I didn't get symptom resolution when I did the parasite cleanse or the parasite protocol that I was given, then I also want you to be able to, my goal is that this episode helps you cross the bridge so you can go from, I know I have one, to here's how I can actually get rid of it, or here's how I can find someone to help me get rid of it. But before we get into all that, I just want to start off with our grounding practice of just talking about symptoms of parasites, right? What are the things that you can be looking for? And I'm going to reiterate this like I've tried to do on all the episodes of this series, which is our 7 pathogen series. And these 7 pathogens this is the 4th one that we're into. They are the 7 pathogens that I'm seeing cause 99% of my clients' symptoms. But the big thing to know is that pathogens, these pathogens don't come alone. Once you have one, you're more prone to getting others because your immune system is down. So what's really interesting when I'm going to read this signs and symptoms list of parasites is that you could have symptoms that are not in this list, and it doesn't mean you don't have a parasite. And we're going to get into more on like how to test and just like know, because we never want to assume just because you have symptoms in this list either. Like, I know I have a parasite. You want to test, don't guess. So that's my little disclaimer before we talk about symptoms. So let's get into some of them. So one of them could be air hunger. Air hunger is a really interesting symptom to start off with. I definitely don't have, not many of my clients are self-aware of this before they get the treatment for the parasite, but usually after they'll say, oh, I just feel like I can breathe more easily, or I don't have to breathe this heavily at night when I'm sleeping, or I don't have to breathe this hard when I'm working out. And it's basically the parasite can steal oxygen from your bloodstream and you will get this feeling that you cannot get enough air. Now, I have had clients have this to an extreme, or at least to a level that it was affecting their body awareness, that it felt like they couldn't get a deep enough breath. They couldn't breathe enough, and they had to breathe really fast and frequently, more than was comfortable, especially when they're at rest. And we call that air hunger. Another symptom is actually going to be something you would find on your blood work, which is high eosinophils. And eosinophils is spelled EOSINOPHIL. It's going to be in your complete blood count, or CBC, part of your blood work. And you want to look at the differential. So it's going to be the percentage of your eosinophils, not your total amount, because they have absolute levels and then they'll have percentage. What you want to know is, what's your percentage of eosinophils to your other white blood cells? And if you're like, this got really complicated really fast, can you just give me something, Allison, so I can plug in my eosinophils? Because the common thing is that I've never seen standard lab testing show high or low numbers for a differential, or an eosinophil percentage, right, compared to your other white blood cells. This is something they'll show the percentage, but they won't show high or low. You actually need a functional lab analysis. And so if you want to even know, I have some blood work, Allison, how do I know if I have high eosinophils? The number one thing I would say is go to betterbellytherapies.com/blood and buy the functional lab analysis spreadsheet that I have that will take all of your blood work and give you functional lab ranges so you can understand how to use them. And if you're like, what the heck is a functional lab range? This is not the episode for that, but here is an episode you can go and listen to that I'm also going to link in the show notes. It is episode 66, 6 Reasons Your Doctor is Reading Your Blood Labs Wrong, plus how you can do it better. And I do talk more about blood work and how it's really being poorly read by conventional doctors and even functional doctors. And it literally give you a tool that you can do it yourself better than most doctors you're going to come into contact with. And it will give you that eosinophil range, so you'll know if yours is high or low. But if yours is high, big sign of parasites. If you have allergies, especially if they've gotten worse over time, it could be that they got worse around the time that you got this parasite. Anemia issues. This is because parasites need iron, just like you need iron, and they will take the iron from your body. Your body, though, is super smart, and so it will say oh, I've got a parasite. I don't want to feed it. And so a lot of times, the most common thing you'll see is that with somebody who has anemia due to parasites, that their blood serum iron is low, but their ferritin levels, which is a storage unit, it's your liver storing iron in an unusable form. It's called ferritin. Ferritin will be high. That's a very common mechanism the body might use to say, I kind of don't want to give nutrients to a pathogen in my body, so I'm going to store it away. But unfortunately, you also miss the activated form of that nutrient, so you'll have that kind of chronic anemia that taking iron doesn't help. And a lot of times taking iron can make the issue worse. So fun fact, if you have low iron, I've never seen it be a good idea to just simply take iron. You want to be asking, why do I have low iron? And I actually have a whole podcast episode on this. I wasn't planning on mentioning it. Let me go grab it real quick. Episode 72, why your iron and vitamin D are still low even after taking supplements. So bonus episode that I wasn't planning on mentioning, but now you know. Okay, more symptoms: anxiety, arthritis, bedwetting in kids, bladder inflammation. And if you're like, how do I know if I have bladder inflammation? It can feel like painful urination, even though you don't have a UTI, or you might even have a a diagnosis of like interstitial cystitis, fatigue, diarrhea, and constipation. And this one is crazy to me that I had to have a conversation like this very, very recently. But I had a client who I'm now working with jump on a call with me, and he was telling me his story, and he basically had a GI map done, which is actually the test I recommend for testing parasites. And he showed H. pylori, which he was being treated for. And then it also showed that he had a parasite. And the practitioner blows my mind that this had to happen, who's like a functional practitioner. It's just like the level of quality is so wide, and I feel so bad that that has to be true. But that's why I'm trying to put out this podcast and this free content to help educate you guys so this won't happen to you. Or if it does, you understand what happened. But he got treated for H. pylori, and he emails me and says, this was my H. pylori protocol, he had a different question about like, I'm going to redo this protocol based on what you recommend. And I actually said, hey, I actually think that it's not, I bet you have other pathogens other than this H. pylori thing. And I don't want you redoing the H. pylori protocol until I know. And he said, well, actually, a parasite came up on my GI map too, but the doctor said, or the person he was working with said that he couldn't have that the parasite must be commensal, meaning it's like a fancy word for saying it's like, it's not bothering him. Usually commensal actually means it's helping him in some way. And it couldn't be, the parasite must not be, it must be commensal because that parasite only causes diarrhea. And I'm like, that is a bunch of baloney. Parasites can cause constipation. That was my main symptom. And he had the same parasite that I did, which is Blastocystis hominis. And I am going to interweave a little bit more of my story into this episode. So stay tuned if that intrigues you. So diarrhea or constipation. Diarrhea most often when it's an acute, like you just recently got it, and then constipation when you've chronically had it. And for my clients who flip-flop between diarrhea and constipation, then there's other factors going on. Maybe you have a parasite and you have something called C. diff, which I don't know if it's next week, but it's in a week or two. My C. diff episode's coming out, and C. diff will cause diarrhea. Or it could be a parasite and high copper toxicity, which can cause estrogen imbalance and cause a lot of PMS symptoms, which can include diarrhea. So it's like, you can have diarrhea or constipation, and you can have both, and a parasite can be involved. Fever and flu-like symptoms, which I find is more of an acute situation. Like you got traveler's diarrhea and you've got flu and fever-like symptoms, fever and flu-like symptoms. But just because those two symptoms go away doesn't mean you don't have a parasite. It just goes into a chronic state, which is where your body's like in a it can't get rid of the parasite, but it also isn't necessarily happy with it there. And so you'll get this change in symptoms. Gallbladder and bile duct diseases, there's a couple reasons for this, but a big one is that there's actually a parasite called Giardia, and it can actually get into your liver and your gallbladder. And so a lot of times if I have clients who have histories of gallbladder removal, I want to make sure that they don't have Giardia, or if they know they have gallstones or they have high liver enzymes, we always want to check for parasites. Gassiness, Hashimoto's, itchiness around the anus. Again, I didn't have that symptom. I totally had a parasite, so you don't have to have all these. Rashes and sores on the skin, itchy skin in general, which has to do with the gut-skin connection and the fact that parasites like to squirt out little toxins that our body isn't designed to deal with, so then it tries to excrete it through the skin. It's super not fun. Vomiting, and nausea, insomnia, weight loss and weight gain, just because of how all the nutrients that you are eating in your food, not all of it, but chunks of it is getting eaten by the parasite. And so your body is now not getting the micronutrients it needs. And so you might overeat, you might undereat, you don't feel good. So the weight loss, weight gain, even if you're eating the same amount and you're like suddenly gaining weight or losing it, it can be because of the micronutrient lack of availability. And generally, this is just something that came up with an episode that I did with Dr. Michelle Pobega, who loves parasites and came over and nerded out about parasites with me in episode 135, which I did link in the show notes. She talks about when you have parasites, the bigger ones come out first, the visible ones you can see, and then then the smaller ones come out. And so if you've ever seen a bigger parasite come out, or you're like, I'm pretty sure that's a parasite, but you've never done an actual like in-depth process in testing for what we call microscopic parasites, then those could totally still be in you. So that'd be another kind of symptom of a parasite infestation, is seeing visible ones in your stool. You definitely want to still check for the microscopic ones. And then my main symptoms I had when I got sick was lethargy, weight loss, insomnia. I couldn't stay asleep, or staying asleep was hard. Falling asleep was impossible. Fatigue, weakness, bloating, constipation, abdominal pain, low back pain, which is from the abdominal pain. I didn't know it at the time, but facial acne, that was like just went out the wazoo, that I'd never had even that bad, even when I was going through puberty, because this was in my 20s. And then puffiness, just like my face was puffy. I thought maybe I was gaining weight, but then my like scale was saying I was losing weight. I was confused. My fingers were puffy, my face was puffy. Everything was no bueno. And if you want to hear more about how I personally had a parasite, go to episode 18, which I linked in the show notes, and I talk about it more there. So real quick, what is a parasite? Is it bacteria? Is it a virus? Is it yeast? Well, in our pathogen series, it's the first one that is not bacteria, virus, or yeast. It is something called protozoa, meaning it's just a more complex, more developed version of a small little, guys, I'm not like in biology. I didn't even bother looking this up, but it's a protozoa and it's just more complex than bacteria. But this is very important. And I know I already said it, but I did have it in my notes to say it here again, that very, very important that this parasite, it can be visible like a worm, and it can be invisible, microscopic. And the majority of my clients who have been infested with parasites, the majority, by far, it's been all microscopic. I've had some clients find and see parasites coming out of their stool, but that just means that they are so infested they cannot even get rid of the big guys. If you want to hear more about that, Dr. Michelle Pobega does talk about the big guys coming out before the little guys in episode 135. And again, from my experience, the big ones are going to come out with like a general detox method. So like a liver detox. When my clients start our liver protocol, the big ones will come out. And then it's the microscopic ones that we have to really do some deeper work to really get out of the body. And it's unfortunately the microscopic kind that A, get overlooked. They don't even get tested for. And B, they're harder to kill. So they're going to need more of a substantial protocol, and even prepping protocols, like protocols you do before you get to the killing protocol. Very, very, very important. So I really get into, if you want to know, like, why are these microscopic parasites overlooked and not tested for, I really get into why doctors don't test for it in episode 18, called the number one most common parasite for IBS, which it is. I cite a buttload of research in that, because IBS was the main thing that I researched and studied in my education career. And so it was really interesting that after I already had written a 20-page research paper on IBS, I later learned that blastocystis hominis, which was the parasite I had and that this client had who had emailed me, is the number one. It's like literally the number one most common parasite for people with IBS. And they've done this testing around the world. And I share that. So if you want to hear me like quote research, and I think I give links to it as well in the episode, just go to episode 18. I know it's like way long ago, but I put a link in the show notes and highly recommend checking that out if you're a little nerdy like me. So where do parasites hang out in the body? So primarily we're going to be talking about small intestines, large intestines, and the liver gallbladder region. There are definitely, you'll hear these, stories of people having parasites in their brain and their eyes. Like, these are possible, but I've actually never seen it. And I get clients all the time who have full resolution of symptoms without needing to go and see a specialist to get a parasite out of their brain. So even though I know that even mentioning that has some of you potentially wigging out, like, I'm probably the one person who has a parasite in my brain. You are actually probably not. I have never had a client not get full resolution when they've worked with us. And what'll happen is, if they don't get full resolution with one chunk of a protocol, then it's not because, that parasite protocol didn't work or they have a parasite in their brain. It's actually because there's other pathogens or other toxins that are causing their issues. I really dive into a free training I made that you can go and get at betterbellytherapies.com/training. And I dive into a concept called the 5 toxin trap, which starts around minute 10 if you are in a rush and just want to get to the juicy stuff. And I will talk about those in that training. I talk about the 5 toxins, and it's 5 categories of toxins that are causing all my clients' symptoms. That's 600 clients, and they're all the clients who nothing else had worked for them prior to working with me. So if you're one of those people who feel like nothing's worked for you, you're in good company. This can work for you. All right. Let's see, catching up with my notes. Where do you get parasites? So a lot of times someone's like, oh my gosh, where did I get this? And they feel there can be some defensiveness, like, I'm a clean person. Why do I have a parasite? You may never find out. You may never know. I have a really strong idea of where mine is, where I got my parasite. You might never know where you got it, but you can always check back to a time period in your life when your symptoms got worse, and sometimes that will be it. It'll be around that time or a couple months right before that time, which is when you would have gotten the parasite. So contaminated food and water, think just poor hygiene at a restaurant you go to, or drinking out of a lake or a river or stream. But that's going to be the biggest thing. It's going to be feces, stool that somehow gets onto just a small amount, gets onto whatever it is you're eating or drinking, and then you ingest it. And I would say that the biggest thing that I see with my clients is travel will cause this, because when we're traveling to different countries, especially developing countries, second or third world countries, which I've done both of those, there's just different hygiene standards than in the US. And at the same time, I have clients who've never left the US and they still have parasites. So I don't know if you want to blame a restaurant on that or what, but I can trace my parasite back to a trip that I took in India in the spring of 2015. All my symptoms started about 2 to 3 months after that trip. And so I was getting insomnia. I couldn't sleep at night, and then I wanted to sleep during the day. And it was like, what's going on? I remember literally asking my Bible study group to pray for me because it was so severe. And I was I'm looking into getting a sleep study done, et cetera, et cetera. And then for some reason, I took out dairy, and I never needed to avoid dairy in my life. I took out dairy from my diet, and I started sleeping better. More on that when we get to the food section. But that did not solve all my issues because I still had a parasite. Getting rid of dairy does not kill a parasite, unfortunately. So think about traveling. You're in just different areas with different standards of hygiene, so you're more likely to pick up, again, that microscopic parasites. Another big one can be dogs and animals. And I know that can be really sad for all my animal lovers listening, but, dogs licking your face, saliva. You get a lot of kids getting parasites this way because dogs can have parasites in them and be fairly symptom-free because they're just different biologically from us, and then we can have we get that parasite from them. Again, microscopic ones, not like worms, like Blastocystis hominis. It's the size of a cell, So you want to just consider that cows, cats, dogs, all this can get you these things. Another thing that I like to mention is that puddles can be a breeding ground for parasites, and animals love to lick up puddles, and then they will lick you, and now you have a parasite. Congratulations. So I have become sensitive to animals licking my face in particular because you can wash your hands and stuff. And I'm kind of anti animals licking my children's face because of that. Percent of population, what's just the number of people who have a parasite? What's the likelihood you have one? I know one functional practitioner, and I could not find the guy who said it, but he's one of the top parasite researchers in the functional medicine world. And he's known for saying if you have a pulse, you have a parasite. And so it's more about living in balance with your parasites. I can't say that for sure. I've done testing on myself and shown that with the testing we did, I had no parasite, but it's also not a comprehensive, every parasite that you could possibly test for, right? It's, so the likelihood that I still have some parasites that I'm living at peace with, potentially very high. Some things to consider though, that that we have research on is that there can be other issues that really aggravate parasite issues in your body. One of the big ones is heavy metals. There have been lots of research done on fish in particular, and just starting to do some on humans, but a lot of research on fish, well, they'll show that parasites inside of fish have 10 times or more higher levels of mercury and arsenic in them than the actual blood levels of mercury and arsenic in that fish. And so the fish is living and breathing in water. It's going to have tons, it's going to absorb everything in the water, all the heavy metals. And then if it has high heavy metals, the parasite absorbs it. So there's this theory right now that functional practitioners are wondering, do some people have parasites that are either hard to get rid of or recurring or something because it is this like weirdly protective, symbiotic, more so codependent, like think negative, like relationship that this parasite's taking care of your heavy metals, but it's not necessarily healthy for you. Like, let's get rid of the heavy metals and the parasites. So whenever somebody comes into my program and I work with them, whether it's one-to-one or in the Better Belly Blueprint, then we're going to be doing the GI map, which has stool parasite testing as well as other forms of pathogen testing like H. pylori, which is so, so important. And I go over and on the H. pylori episode, just a few episodes prior to this one. But we also want to do a test for heavy metals, which I use the HTMA because that can be such a big aggravator of symptoms, but also enabling and kind of encouraging your body to like let that parasite stick around. So reasons a doctor or functional professional will test this for you, they basically, if they think and know about parasites, they're going to want to test. I think that really good practitioners should be almost always hands down testing for parasites. And that's why I do that. You don't really come into my program without getting a parasite test. And if you come in and you've had an H. pylori test and you've had all these other pathogen tests, I'm going to be like, okay, the one that's missing is a parasite because it's the one that's missing. It's the testing you don't have or the testing that you got that was very bad tests, like a parasite test in a hospital. They're not good. They do not find parasites. And then I'll do a GI map and the person has a parasite. So it's like, like you need a good test and you need a test you need to have a test that's even testing for parasites and it should be a good one. And when you have both of those, then I'll be like, okay, if that doesn't say you have a parasite, let's move on. If you have symptoms of a parasite, a doctor or functional professional should be thinking about a test for you. Think like big ones for me. If you say like, I've had chronic anemia my whole life and I want to test you for a parasite, I want to look at some other stuff too. That is not the only thing that can cause anemia, but I want to test for it. Yeah, if you have all the chronic GI symptoms, which is what this podcast is known for, talking about. So it's going to be bloating, constipation, diarrhea, acid reflux. We want to be looking at parasites. So that's why I test for parasites on every client because we have all these symptoms floating around, the insomnia, the fatigue, the bloating and constipation and diarrhea. They can be caused by other symptoms and things, but we need to rule out issues. And if it hasn't been ruled out for you, it could very well be the main thing causing your issue right now. So big reasons that practitioners don't test. You're like, if this is such a big deal, Allison, why don't people think about it? I really want to reserve that for episode 18, where I just bombed like all this research on that is basically misleading, especially conventional practitioners, but even functional practitioners on parasites. And it's making them think they're not as big of a deal as they are. And then they don't look for it. And that's kind of it. The other thing, again, is that maybe your doctor in a hospital did do a stool test for a parasite, but it came back negative. But those tests are not very strong. So that's another thing. They might be thinking about it, but the test wasn't good to begin with. So what test should you do? I've already said it a couple times, but this is my official spot to say it in the podcast. The GI map. Do the GI map test. What are signs of a good protocol? You're going to need a pre-pathogen protocol, especially for a parasite, meaning things that are going to increase your vitality. For me, my pre-pathogen protocols, these are their titles. It's not like everything inside them, but I work on the liver, I work on digestion, I work on leaky gut, and I work on nutrient status. I work on all of those before I even start to kill parasites because you want your body to have as much vitality and support getting rid of the pathogen with the protocol. Then when you're in the protocol, you want something called a biofilm buster, which is a herbal supplement that can break down biofilm, which is like a protective film that bacteria, parasites, yeast, etc., can create around them, so that they don't get it's like a wall. It's like a castle wall. So whatever's supposed to kill them doesn't even get to them. Need a detox and die-off manager, something that can help absorb toxins that little microbe will squirt out to make you regret the day you tried to kill it. Meaning your symptoms will usually get worse when you're on a really good pathogen protocol, especially for a parasite. And so you need a supplement to help mop up those toxins, so you minimize your die-off symptoms. And then you need a powerhouse supplement, one or two, kind of depending on what supplement you're working with and what's inside of it. There should be multiple ingredients. If you're using one pill, there should be multiple ingredients. And that's like the thing that just like kills them. I do a parasite protocol for 2 months. So signs of a good protocol, usually I'd say, there are maintenance protocols. That's what I consider them, that are like 3 to 6 days, and you'll do them around the full moon, because parasites are more active then. But those are like, if your health status is already pretty good, then your immune system doesn't need as much of this like long-term support to kill stuff off. You can just do like a little 6-day full moon, wipe a bunch out if there's anything there, work on the eggs, stuff like that. You can do that like quarterly, but I don't have clients do that. I don't personally do a quarterly like maintenance parasite protocol. But I just know some practitioners who do. What really a good protocol, especially if you haven't had resolution of symptoms yet, is going to be something like 2 months, because you want to get cycles of the eggs hatching and turning into larvae and then full parasite, so that you can then kill them off to the point that they're not creating more eggs. And so it takes about 2 months to get like these full cycles of egg, larva, protozoa, and then so that there's no more eggs left, and you don't like do a month-long protocol and then like the next wave of eggs hatches and you still have that parasite. So signs of bad protocol would be like they don't last 2 months. You just do an anti-parasitic or some type of herbal remedy and no other foundational supportive protocols beforehand. But in general, I actually, like in some of the previous episodes and in some of the future ones, I'm going to share and have shared protocols that have been handed to me by clients. And they said, this is the protocol I did. Was this good enough? Or they'll say, this is the one that I'm 3 days into. Should I continue it? And I will look at it and say, this will not kill XYZ thing it's supposed to kill. Like I would just like stop. H. pylori is a really big one that people just get really bad and crappy protocol recommendations for. I don't know why. And I give an example in my episode that I have 3 or 4 back. So, but for parasites, usually the issue is I haven't seen very many parasite protocols, because usually the issue is they are not being tested for, or that the test came back negative because it was not a GI map. I'm a little biased, but basically it was like a conventional hospital test. So if you personally have a parasite protocol you've done and you think or know it didn't work, I would love to see it, because I just want to be like, what are people creating? I like finding the failure points. What failed? And sometimes it's the protocol. Sometimes it's not the protocol. Sometimes it's what they didn't do before that protocol. Sometimes it's what they didn't do after. Sometimes it's the fact that they didn't test for other pathogens or other toxins like heavy metals, right? But there's always a failure point. If you're not feeling better, it's not because you didn't do the diet good enough or because you should have taken the supplements longer. It's because literally the plan created for you was never going to work, and there's just not enough data behind you. So inside my program, the Better Belly Blueprint, that's what I help you do. You can, when you join, you can do this program fully DIY on your own, which helps minimize your costs to just get access to all this information. We get you wholesale lab ordering that you do inside the program. You don't pay us, you pay directly to the lab. So it's HSA and FSA eligible. You go through our process. And if you want group coaching on top of that, meaning you get my feedback, you can come bring your testing and say, this is what I've done. What should I do next? We have all of that support built in, and you can add on group coaching to it. And so there's different ways to get group coaching. There's like, depending on when you join, if you join within 24 hours of signing up for our training, so go to betterbellytherapies.com/training. If you sign up for the Better Belly Blueprint in 24 hours of signing up for that training, then you get group coaching, 3 months of it for free, totally free. If you join after that, And if you add on coaching when you join, it's $97. And if you don't join and say, I'm going to try and do it myself, and then you try to join later, the full price of 3 months of group coaching is $297. But like, we made this program so accessible. I've had clients tell me they spent $3,000 to work with a functional practitioner for 3 months. This is 10% of that. It's $300 at the worst, or free when you join. So go to betterbellytherapies.com/training if you want to know more about how the Better Belly Blueprint works. And then the other option is, like, if you're just like, Allison, I want you to do it for me. Can you just like do it for me? I have a VIP option where you can work with me, and I will put a link to an application call. If you're like, I want to work with you, Allison, I want this to be a thing, but I just need to make sure that this is the right thing for me, then just click the link in the show notes, or go to betterbellytherapies.com/application, and you can book that call. And the last thing is, I will just put a link directly to booking. Like, if you're just like, I don't even need the application call, I want to join now, just go to betterbellytherapies.com/VIP, or click the link in the show notes, and you'll get an option to do a payment plan or pay in full. So lastly, but not leastly, everyone asks me questions about food. Like, what do I eat when I have XYZ symptoms? It's not about your symptoms, right? So for some pathogens, there are some nice dietary guidelines. The only thing I've heard with parasites, and I've only heard this, I haven't found a lot of research to back it up, is that I've heard that if you have a sudden onset of dairy sensitivity, this is a common result of parasites who love dairy. And so when you're eating this dairy, they will become extra active and then poop out a bunch of these toxins. And your body starts to associate dairy with these toxins, and you'll become quote unquote sensitive. You'll have an actual immune response to that dairy. So I haven't found any research on that. It's just like a interesting thing I hear in the functional community. But interestingly enough, I already mentioned to you guys that my very first symptom that showed up about 2 to 3 months after I made this trip to India, and I did get like a traveler's diarrhea thing, and then I thought it went away and I was fine. I wasn't having diarrhea. About 2 to 3 months later, I'm having this insomnia, and I take out dairy from my diet and I start sleeping again. Well, guess what? The parasite wasn't dealt with. I didn't even know I had a parasite. I still was only thinking in terms of food. So about 2 to 3 months after I took out dairy, I started having more sensitivities to other foods because the parasite was damaging my gut lining and giving me leaky gut. And you can actually develop more food sensitivities with leaky gut. Interestingly enough, I still have some food restrictions I'm still on, like wheat, but I can eat some dairy. I can eat butter and ghee, really, really high fat content dairy products. But I still stick to 99% non-dairy products like goat cheese, goat yogurt, almond milk, traditional feta, traditional manchego, etc. So if you're on a dairy-free diet, or you're toying with the idea, but you're like, how do I still eat creamy, cheesy foods? I have an episode just for you, which is 3 dairy-free foods for creamy cheeses, sauces, and pizza, and none of them are vegan. None of them. Guys, I don't like vegan stuff. Like, it just doesn't taste like real or good. Actually, one of them's vegan, but it's not like fake vegan stuff. It's just like a whole food. Anyways, go to episode 171 or click the link in the show notes, and you can get that episode. It's a lot of my clients' favorite, like some of their favorite episodes, because when they're in the program, they're like, what do I eat? Go listen to that episode, and it'll give you lots of tips. So generally, though, this is what I recommend for food. If you're like, that's not a food recommendation, Allison, this is what I actually recommend. Get a Zoomer test done, which is the best food sensitivity test. We do it in our program. We get it for you for the best price out there. And this is not to get rid of the parasite. This is to lower inflammation in your body. And when you lower inflammation, then your immune system can focus on getting rid of pathogens like a parasite. So that's what I recommend. There's going to be, on the Zoomer test, there will be some permanent food sensitivities and some temporary ones that will go away once your leaky gut is healed. And so like you will have fewer food restrictions after healing your gut. And that's what our clients have when they're done with our program, which is about 3 to 6 months for most people. When they're done with that, they have fewer food restrictions than when they started. So, and they feel great, and they don't have to keep taking supplements or spending money on doctors and they could just live their life again. I had a client recently tell me, and you guys will hear it. If you subscribe and keep listening, I'm going to have an episode come out with my client, Dawn, who worked with me in the Blueprint. He actually is a graduate of the Better Belly Blueprint. And he's so sweet. He said something like, Allison, some people say you changed my life, but you gave me my life back. And I'd say that a lot of my clients feel that way. They feel that their life has been taken from them because they can't travel. They can't hang out with friends at night. They can't go to as many restaurants. They can't feel good after they eat. They're anxious about their health and where it might be in 5 years or 10 years, or they're anxious if they leave the house, if they'll be able to find a bathroom. All these different things are happening, and it doesn't have to be this way. So I want you to have your life back. If you're looking for a really actionable way that you can do that next, just go to betterbellytherapies.com/training and you'll learn about my gut healer system, which is what I use for all my clients to heal their bodies. Whether you're working with me one-to-one as a VIP client or in the Better Belly Blueprint, getting group coaching, that is the same process I use because it has been proven to work with over 600 clients over the last 6 years. So that is it. That's my spiel on parasites. I hope that helped you, gave you some hints, gave you some just insights and ahas into yourself, and maybe save you from some maybe not so good protocols that someone might try to give you, or gives you some courage to leave a practitioner you're working with, because you can say no to them. You don't have to work with them. Work with somebody who makes you feel better and not someone who just throws supplements at you. All right, that's it. And I'll catch you guys next week. Bye. Hey friend, I hope you loved this episode. If you've been a fan for a while or newly loving this podcast, can you do me a favor? Drop into Apple Podcasts and leave me a review. When you leave a review, you do so much. You help me know you're listening. You can tell me what you're loving so I know what to make more of. And you help others by boosting this podcast so other people like you can find the podcast too. I mean, it's a win-win-win, right? So if you want a way to pay it forward, just go to Apple Podcasts or click the link in my show notes and leave a rating and review. And if you want some more free stuff, just head over to my free Facebook group, betterbellytherapies.com/Facebook, and you can get access to all of my free support for you, including some Facebook group exclusive stuff like my podcast episode vault, where you can search the Better Belly podcast by topic and find exactly what you need to expedite your healing. I cannot wait to see you in there. Catch you guys next week.